And recording. All right. Hello, everybody. This is Fuel Your Fire podcast. I am Dr. Rachel, and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Travis. We had a really good question this week about recovery techniques and things like whether heat or ice are better, and just really how to optimize your performance so that you're not so sore that you're out for multiple days at a time. I thought that my husband would be the perfect person to address this topic because I think his philosophy half the time is rest days are optional. I don't think he takes ever a true rest day. They're usually at least active rest days. And so we're going to kind of pick his brain how he's able to do that without any major injuries and, being able to still perform well with lifting and running and jiu-jitsu and some of the different sporting things that he endeavors in. So this is Dr. Travis.
All right. Hey, thanks, guys. Good to see you back. Thanks, Rachel, for having me onto the podcast. So I'm going to start through the list kind of with things you can do at home on your own, conservatively, financially, and then kind of work up a little ways from there, maybe from different providers or otherwise. So kind of going through that hierarchy a little bit, maybe some things you've heard, maybe a little different spin on things, but a few tips and tricks that have helped me over the years through other sources, as well as a lot of self-experimentation. So number one recovery technique I tell people is sleep. If you're not sleeping right, you're not going to recover, you're not going to function. If you have a midnight shift job, I'm sorry, it needs to change. I tell patients that all the time. Some people claim to enjoy it. It gets more time with family, etc. So I understand if that's your lifestyle and that's what's required of you right now. But I do not recommend nighttime topics or nighttime employment long term. It's been classified as a carcinogen, and again, the human body is not made to operate consistently when it's dark outside. Quickly on sleep. So depends on the person. Some people, I don't need much sleep, or some people claim to need a lot of sleep. Everyone's different. I understand that. Our bodies operate on a circadian rhythm, so a cycle, right? So every 90 minutes or every hour and a half is kind of a new rotation, if you will. Sleep patterns, ideally you want to sleep, again, while it's dark out, kind of when the sun goes down, to when the sun comes up. However, like here in Michigan in the middle of December, it's really long, okay? It gets dark at 5, it doesn't get light until 8, 9 in the morning, right? So that you might not want to be hibernating that entire time.
And sometimes oversleeping actually makes things worse because it makes you more fatigued.
Yeah.
So more sleep is not always better.
Correct.
There is a sweet spot for most people between 6 and 8 hours.
Yeah, I typically say 6 to 9 hours because that 6, 7.5, or 9 hour window, one of those time slots, if you will, kind of sets you on that circadian rhythm cycle, right? So again, for me, it's usually 9:30, 10 o'clock. Up around 5 o'clock or so. So that's kind of that 7.5 hour window.
Yeah,
so.
And a lot of times your sleep requirements too are going to depend on how well you're taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, because if you're drinking alcohol, for example, you're going to require more hours of sleep because the hours of sleep you're getting are not quality hours of sleep.
May hope you fall asleep quickly, but you won't stay asleep as well due to blood sugar fluctuations and otherwise. So sleep is a number one. I'm actually a fan of the midday siesta. For me, I try to have lunch and then I'll put a hat or a towel over my eyes for 10 minutes, right? I set a timer. I'm up, in, again, 10, 15, max of 20, but a little bit of time to let the brain recover. So an afternoon, midday eye close can be very beneficial for the brain and recovery there too.
Right. Yeah, and that's definitely you're really good at that. Some of us are not as good at napping. I just go to bed super early, once or twice a week. Literally 8:30 sometimes I'm in bed, but it's just if I'm training a lot and I'm really burning the candle, if I just go to bed an hour and a half early, 1 or 2 nights a week, that allows me the catch up time that you probably get during your power naps.
Right.
Right.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, those people maybe on like a 6-hour sleep cycle sometimes, you might want to lean more towards the nap, right?
Right.
That can help you recover some sleep debt, but again, it doesn't fully make up for it, right?
Yeah.
Versus if you're getting maybe 9 hours per night, maybe you don't need a nap. Okay,
Right.
so apply it to your situation. But sleep is crucial. Quality sleep is crucial. We can cover details kind of at a later time. But basics, make sure it's cool, okay, around 65 to 68 degrees. Quiet, dark as possible, and those are some basics.
We can run a whole podcast on sleep hygiene,
Right.
but really the most important thing to remember, guys, is like, abs are made in the kitchen, and like muscles grow while you sleep.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, if you're not sleeping, it's really hard to lose weight. It's really hard to optimize your gym performance. It's really hard to have like optimal blood sugar to be able to do like long distance cardio. So, getting optimal sleep definitely is always going to optimize your performance in multiple areas of life.
When I think about it this way too, as humans, we spend on average 1/3 of our life asleep.
Right.
If you're spending 1/3 of your entire life doing something like that,
It's important.
optimize it.
Yeah.
It's important.
Right, and that's also why we designed the sleep supplement that we did, the Lights Out, because, Lights Out is designed to be like an anti-stress, like lowering cortisol type product to really like optimize sleep recovery. You have the magnesium in there to help with the muscle relaxation. You have the phosphatidylserine in there to help with stress reduction on the brain. You have your chromium to balance your blood sugar, reishi to boost your immune system. So like, a lot of these things are aimed at, optimizing those circadian rhythm patterns and just making it so you can get as much sleep as possible if you are only sleeping 6 hours.
Right. Yep.
Right. So
Optimize your sleep.
optimize the sleep.
So again, sleep's at the top of the list. May sound basic, but again, it's a foundational item. Next, so one of the things, hydration, another foundational item.
Yes.
If you're not hydrated, okay, our human bodies are 75, give or take, % water, okay?
Right.
If you're not hydrated, you're not recovering, okay? Plain and simple.
Yeah.
Your tissues require it, your muscles require it, your brain requires it, everything requires it. Be hydrated.
Right.
Okay. Different hydration techniques. So for myself, I get up first thing in the morning, and this is 34 ounces. Typically, I've got one of those down by 5:30 in the morning.
Right.
Typically, so I'll just have an entire super hydrate first thing in the morning.
And it's going to give you more energy for your exercise
Right.
too, because people don't think of it as like water gives you energy, but like it is a nutrient that gives you energy. It's part of what fuels you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every cellular process. Well.
Yeah.
All
it's
essential
dependent on it.
cellular
Yeah.
processes require water. Water is utilized to basically allow your body to extract waste. So by the processes that your body has to go through, the cells, their function, right, again, breaks down water, and that's how it excretes it via CO2 with respiration, right?
Yeah. And you need it for your blood to transport oxygen. Yeah, all the
Right,
fun things.
exactly. So that kind of leads me into one of my next ones, breathing techniques, okay? Breathing, again, how long can you survive without food? Give or take, 3 weeks, right? How long can you survive without water? Give or take, a week. How long can you survive without air? Not very long, a couple minutes, right?
Right.
So you start to see brain damage after a couple minutes without breathing, without oxygen in certain circumstances, obviously. But how you breathe is important. It can enhance your performance during workouts. Obviously, it can help to enhance recovery as well.
Right.
So basic breathing principles are nasal breathing and abdominal breathing. Okay, so breathing in and out through your nose at all times that you're not laughing, yelling, eating,
gasping for
talking, gasping for air, swimming. So all these, so even running, right? So I've began to apply that nasal breathing. It's taken some time to incorporate that, but applying it into running as well. Okay, it's going to slow you down at first, but trust me, it becomes more efficient. Combo that with abdominal breathing, so belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. A, helps protect your back and spine, and again, B, it's much more proficient. Nasal breathing combined with abdominal breathing draws oxygen into the deeper portions of your lungs, the lower lobes, all right, which often aren't used for people who sit at desks or drive, or basically most of our society is breathing incorrectly because it's aesthetic to suck things in and walk around, like on a bodybuilding stage.
Right.
You know,
and then you feel like passing out.
Yeah,
in 20
sport-specific
seconds.
things. But again, if you look at strongman, if you look at power lifters, if you look at these guys, you know, it may seem like they've got a lot of what I call table muscle. But again, it's proper abdominal activation and proper breathing, which braces the spine and allows them to function optimally, right?
Yeah.
So breathing is crucial. Nasal breathing, abdominal breathing, right?
And just some like practical applications for that, guys, because Dr. Travis is my running coach because I'm not very good at it. You know, some things that he has me work on when I'm really trying to like control my heart rate and like optimize my cardio abilities is I'll do things like plug one nostril and like practice breathing in and out one side and alternate, practice breathing out the other side. Put your hands on your stomach. Make sure that your stomach is actually moving when you run. You know, you can even see like a lot of, you know, marathon athletes and things doing this. Well, they'll put their fingers under their belly button and just kind of like make sure that they're getting some kind of movement and activation in their lower abdominals in order to bring more oxygen in, because the more you move your lower abdomen, you know, the deeper your lungs are going to bring air in. And that's just going to optimize everything, because even when you're talking about muscle soreness and trigger points and knots, those are all due to lack of oxygen to the tissue. So like Dr. Travis said, if you optimize breathing and oxygenate those tissues, you're going to have less muscle soreness because you can't form the knot in the first place if everything has adequate oxygen.
Right.
Right.
Yep. Alternate nostril breathing is a great technique for that. There are a lot out there. Another one, another breathing technique, more specifically geared toward relaxation, relaxation of nervous system, relaxing yourself in stressful situations, is technique kind of spearheaded by Mark Devine, a former Navy SEAL commander. It's called box breathing. Okay, so either done a 3, 4, or 5 count typically. Let's just say a 4 count. Again, breathing in and out always through the nose, but breathing in through the nose for a 4 count, holding the inhale for a 4 count, exhaling through the nose for a 4 count, and then holding the exhale for a 4 count returns you to the inhale, holding, exhale, holding.
Right.
Okay? So again, box breathing is a great way to initiate that kind of some of those breathing patterns, and really just becoming aware of how you are breathing. Okay, when you are breathing, is it shallow? Is it deep? You know.
And all those things are going to optimize, you know, performance and not just recovery, because you're going to have more adequate oxygen flow to your muscles, like while you're training too. Even if you're trying to do box breathing while you're running, or do box breathing like during your warm up, it is going to, help with that area as well.
Yep. So breathing crucial. If you get to holding your breath, try it for a little while during a run. That won't happen.
Well, yeah, and even when you talk about most people like injuring themselves, especially during cardio, like we both see a lot of patients that will throw ribs out because of improper breathing techniques during cardio. And I'm going to tell you, if you throw a rib out, you're not going back to the gym tomorrow because it hurts like a son of a gun. But most of the time they throw the rib out because they're breathing like really recruiting their shoulders and really moving it up towards their neck, and then you have neck pain the next day and rib pain the next day, and then you're like, why am I so sore? It's like, well, you're using muscles that aren't supposed to be used for running.
Or the quote I hear every day, I carry all my stress in my shoulders. I carry all my tension in my shoulders.
Right, yeah.
No, you're probably just breathing wrong.
Yeah, because you're breathing like this and like
Exactly.
moving your chest and your rib cage so much, and your rib cage only supposed to move like what, a half to a quarter of an inch. Like,
right. Yep. It's supposed to allow for expansion, not elevation.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So expansion, not elevation.
Right.
That leads into a little bit segues into the next one, yoga. All right, so I say yoga as an idea. All right, you don't have to sprint down to your local yoga studio and grow your hair out and wear tie-dye t-shirts and all these things. So again, yoga as kind of a loose guideline to
just trying to
move
think
more,
about you with long
stretch.
hair and a tie-dye
Yeah,
t-shirt.
great. Curly hair, curly long red hair. Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
it'd be like Ginger Tarzan over here.
So if you haven't, maybe it's been for years since you've done stretching after sports or what have you, and you're just not sure where to start. That's where I'll tell people, I'll say, hey, go on YouTube, type in beginner yoga, start there, learn some basic poses, right? Perform each side equally, and again, it's a starting point. You can develop your own thing, you can accommodate it with other things that you know, but again, it moves your body in ways that you wouldn't expect. As I'll see people all the time, let's take knee pain for example, right? And they think, oh, it's from the knee, it's got to be from the knee. No, it could be tension held from somewhere else in the system. It could be from your
ankles,
foot, ankles, calves,
definitely
hips,
ankles.
Lower back. It could be from those items, right? So, the site of pain is not always the site of the problem, right? Yeah. So again, moving your body in a new manner is an exploratory form for you, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize. I always hurt on my right hip, and my left hip couldn't do nearly the mobility that my right hip could.
Right.
What's going on? So again, it helps you explore and find your own body. Okay, so find where you're at, start where you're at. Be relatively patient with yourself, but find those things and explore them.
Yeah, because definitely, like you said, with like starting a yoga class, a lot of people will find those insufficiencies, especially when they do the balancing poses. When you're like, oh, stand just on the right leg or stand just on the left leg. You figure out like, wow, I always have pain in the right leg, but my left leg wobbles like a mother trucker every time I try to do the standing leg pose on the left side. Okay, well, maybe your right side hurts because it's overused because your left side sucks. Or like you said, sometimes your knee hurts because your ankle mobility is terrible. Maybe you can't dorsiflex past parallel. Yeah, well, you're going to have knee pain then. And yoga will teach you those things, but if you don't know where your insufficiencies are, you can always just like search random things in YouTube for yoga. You can put yoga for back pain. It'll give you 20 videos that are specific for releasing back pain, with stretching. We used to have like an amazing class at Yoga Studio here that was like yoga for back pain, and it was literally just an hour of like stretching, mobilization, and foam rolling that was specific towards that one condition, and it was fantastic.
Right. Yep.
So you can always find those things in your area or on the internet, depending on what's available.
Yep. Along similar lines with self-body work, so you mentioned foam rolling. Can I see the foam roller there? So if you guys don't know what a foam roller is, Exhibit A, okay, foam, looks like a roller, it's a cylinder. Yeah, so foam roller, $6 at your local Dollar General, $8 on Amazon.
Yeah.
We have some here in the office. Most gyms have them.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful self-torture device that you should probably spend a little bit of time on. My runners, very commonly, I'll have them spend a little bit of time on the outer thigh for the IT band, right? So that's a very, very common one. I'm not saying that's everybody, but it's a good one to start with, through the quads, the calves. Again, those larger muscle groups, don't be rolling over bone with that type of thing on a foam roller. It doesn't always feel great, right? So again, the larger muscle groups that you can work into kind of along the back, rolling up and down that way, is a good mobility tool.
And that'll kind of integrate the breathing thing too, because the thing that helps me the most with the foam roller is, I get really tight, glutes and TFLs and things, especially doing 75 hard. And if I just roll up and down the outside of my leg, when I find a tight spot, I just literally lean into that tight spot and breathe for a few minutes until I can feel the tight spot release. If you really concentrate on, in yoga they tell you send your breath to that area. Really concentrate on letting your body release that tension in that one spot as you breathe into it on the foam roller. That's a really good way to go. So you don't have to foam roll as fast as possible. Sometimes just finding the hot spot and breathing through it is the best way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And it doesn't have to be an hour smash session.
Right.
Spend 3 minutes before your squat day, or 5 minutes in the morning or after you have your coffee or do your reading, right? Spend a couple minutes. Maybe it's in the evening. Maybe you have to rush out in the morning.
Yeah.
But a couple of minutes, incorporate that before or after a yoga session or workout. So again, a little bit of time consistently will be helpful. Similar to the foam roller is a lacrosse ball. Rubber ball about the size of a baseball. Tennis balls are an alternative that are easier to start with for those individuals that might be harder.
Yeah.
Right. So again, the lacrosse ball is a little more pinpoint. You can delve into tighter, knottier areas. Around the shoulders works wonderfully. Kind of here in the anterior neck, anterior shoulder, front of the shoulder works really well.
Pin it against the wall.
Right, yep.
Roll through it.
Bottoms of the feet for the runners and otherwise. Again, it's kind of a self-massage tool that's a little more pinpoint. I think they cost $1.50 at your local sports store.
Yeah, and I mean,
So
I
it
usually
doesn't-
use those as like my activation, if you will, like before I exercise, because a lot of times if you do like the foam rolling and the lacrosse ball, like as a prep for your movement, you can actually hit the movements like deeper and more efficiently and like freer. Because I know like working out first thing in the morning, sometimes you get under that squat bar and you're like, wow, there's no way I can go full depth today because everything's just super tight in my hips or super tight in my hamstrings. But if you sit there and you do some like foam roll activation or some lacrosse ball activation first, all of a sudden you can drop down full depth in your squat first thing in the morning because you did that, homework beforehand. And then you're less likely to get injured.
Correct. Yep.
Which is
So
always a win.
the proper amount of mobilization with that. And also along those self-mobilization tools, Voodoo floss, or that would fall under the compression category. So Voodoo floss, you can find that again online, certain stores.
It's basically a giant rubber band.
Yeah, it's kind of a medium thickness rubber band, maybe 2 inches in width and 6 to 8 feet long. What you can do is you take and wrap that around, let's say, your knee. You start at the base, you work up, you wrap it over itself, you wrap it around, and it's fairly tight. It's again, it's compression-based therapy. You can wrap that around joints. Sometimes it's hard to wrap like an elbow or something yourself, so you may need help in some areas. I love to do my ankles, my knees, and otherwise those are very helpful areas. But again, wrapping and compressing some of those joints and then sending them through a range of motion. Maybe you're doing that squat in the morning, so you do a few air squats with that compression on. A note of caution with that, though, don't leave it on too long. You're going to cut off blood flow to the extremity, right? So 2-3 minutes is tops, okay? Tight, but not too tight, obviously. So that's kind of a self-assessment there as far as tension and restriction go on that.
Yeah.
So.
And just like a side note on some of these recovery tool guys, I do want to just throw in a plug for the book Atomic Habits, where they talk about piggybacking habits. So if you are having a hard time like making things like stretching and foam rolling part of your routine, it's a good thing to have those tools like right in front of your face, readily available, or just always know that you have to do it before you do a certain movement. Like I know that I cannot do a squat unless I do foam roll first. And so like I piggyback those two things together because I like doing squats, but I don't like hurting during squats. So I know I do that beforehand. And that's when I get it in, because I'm not good at, I come home in the evening and I'm just going to sit there and stretch. Like that's something Dr. Travis is really good at. Like I have to piggyback it like with my actual workout. So there's like an incentive to get it done. Rather than like, you should do this, it's good for you. So try to find a way that you can like piggyback your habits so that you like make it an automatic part of your day, because recovery tools don't work unless you're doing them regularly.
And again, consistency is key.
Right.
Like I said, even 5 minutes a day, pre-workout, post-workout, evening, morning, consistency. One of my personal favorites is hot and cold therapy. So the world's your oyster on some of those. One of the easier spots to start is the shower. All right, most of us hopefully have a shower. We're spending time in there
Every day.
Once a day. Yeah.
Sometimes 3 times a day.
Just depends. So if you're typically a hot shower type of person, oh my goodness, the hot shower feels great and it relaxes all my muscles. Timing is kind of important on temperature too, right? I'm not a big advocate of like a super hot shower before bed. Maybe it's cold outside and you've been freezing all day long. Yeah, in those cases, but
just for athletic recovery purposes,
right,
though, we want to work on implementing like the cold water sometime in the day.
Correct. Yes. Right. So again, if you're an outside
we're not talking about grandma right now that's been freezing at a football game all day.
Right. So recovery purposes, hot cold therapy. An easy way to start: shower, 20 seconds hot, 10 seconds cold, 20 seconds hot, 10 seconds cold, and repeat for 4 to 8 repetitions. Okay. Or an alternative, maybe take your hot shower if you're typically a hot shower taker, and then cold at the very end for 10 seconds to a minute. Okay, so those are introductory ways to get used to cold water. Tip on that, typically when that cold water starts, everybody freaks out, then they hold their breath and do that deal, and you start shivering automatically. That's your body's response. Okay, so let that come to you, and then
let it pass.
Go to your breathing.
Yeah.
Okay, so make sure you're breathing, and that will again help work it through. It's just a temperature change. You're not going to die. All right, it's just changing over and changing your psychology, and then working through that transition too.
Yeah, just a backup on like the hot versus cold thing. So, I don't think that there's like a better therapy as far as like hot therapy or cold therapy. They both have like their own benefits, right? Which we're definitely going to delineate those. So I wouldn't say like, oh, always use cold, always use hot. I mean, cold is always going to decrease inflammation, vasoconstrict and kind of like push fluid out of the areas, which is great if you're trying to like flush some swelling out or get the inflammation down. Heat, on the other hand, brings new blood flow into the area and like vasodilates, right? So if you have an injury, like a chronic injury especially, where there's maybe like a decreased blood flow to that area that's making it a chronic injury, then, we need the heat because we need to bring new blood flow in, new oxygen, and, really activate those mitochondria as much as possible and speed up the metabolism of the cell so that it can heal faster. So there's going to be a time and a place for both therapies, and that's where Dr. Travis is getting into, like the alternation between the two, because you can kind of do both at the same time. You don't always have to just pick one or the other. They can be in combination.
Right.
Like you go from sauna to freezing cold shower.
Right. Yeah, you have to know, you have to start to put together what works for you at the proper time, right? You talked about vasoconstriction, vasodilation, so opening and closing of blood vessels. The story that I tell people there has great benefit for many things, but one of the most notable is cardiovascular health. Okay, so our arteries, all right, the vessels that carry oxygenated blood away from the heart, have smooth muscle within that lining. Okay, smooth muscle. Okay, how do you train skeletal muscle? You go to the gym, you do curls, you exercise, right? You move throughout your day, you pick up the grandkids, right? So that's training skeletal muscle, right? One way that you can quote unquote hack and train smooth muscle within arterial walls is temperature. Okay, so heat opens or vasodilates, allowing more fluid through that vessel to get it to the to its tissue, to pass more blood near the surface of our skin so that we can cool and these things, right? So that relaxes that smooth muscle. Cold therapy vasoconstricts, okay, or closes down that blood vessel, right? So when you go from that hot, open, to cold, vasoconstrict, you are exercising a muscle, okay, smooth muscle. Can you say, okay, smooth muscle, contract? No. But can you go into a cold shower, cold body water? Yeah. So that's one way, again, you can't consciously control it, but in some regards, we can control our environment. Okay, so that's one way to kind of work around that. And again, if you are, with vessel constriction dilation, you are training that cardiovascular system, all right, which again has implications heart health, vessel
Right.
health, etc. Okay, so that's if that's you, your family, high stress, etc. That can be a very good way to train. And again, the hot cold start with within your means, and then work up from there.
Right.
My personal favorite where I'm at right now is I'm 15-20 minutes in dry sauna, about 180 degrees, and then I'll hop right into the cold shower
Right.
for 5 to 10 minutes. When possible, I like to go right from the sauna to actually, we live
Jump on the
very
lake,
near the
yeah.
lake, and I like to jump right into the lake, which depending on the time of year, I've been in it year-round, every month of the year, so I've been in it from 70 degrees to 34 degrees.
Right.
Obviously, when it's 34 degrees, I'm not in there for 10 minutes. I'll be in for 30 seconds to a minute at that point.
Right.
But again, it's taken me time to adapt into that environment. Another note as well, if possible, do go into a natural body of water. Okay, submersing yourself
Right.
in water has hydrostatic pressure. We talked about pressure and different compression and that sort of deal, and that helps to alleviate tension from within tissues as well. But the bigger effect that I like from natural bodies of water is the earthing or grounding effect. Okay,
Right.
so when you, for example, walk on the beach for the first time of the year and your feet are in the sand, it feels absolutely amazing, right? To be barefoot and outside in the sand or in the grass or what have you. You know that feeling from the bottom of your feet, right? So being in contact with the earth like that helps to replenish electrons that, again, we've built up throughout the day in our environment, being stuck inside, right? Most of us are. We're in homes, we're in buildings, etc. Or we're wearing shoes or boots outside even, right? So when you can get in contact with, again, the earth, natural bodies of water. So again, there's earthing or grounding, it's called. There is a lot of cool research out there on it as well. Sounds a little woo-woo, but does help.
Yeah, I mean, most people feel very refreshed after they just like go camping for a weekend. So I mean, I don't
Correct.
think there's like an argument in the fact that it's
Right.
somewhat restorative to like
Yeah.
touch the ground, sleep on the ground, do those types of things. I think everybody
Right.
has like a real life example they can probably think of that happening. Who doesn't feel better after a day at the beach, you know?
Right.
So we've kind of covered the wellness aspects of like hot cold therapy. Do you want to go into the specifics of like if you have an injury? So like let's say that you have a knee injury that gets like swelled up when you go to the gym. Like what would you say hot cold therapy wise as far as like a specific injury goes as opposed to just like overall wellness for your muscles?
My thought process goes to, so again, kind of type of injury, right? So if you have excessive swelling, cold to kind of diminish that a little bit, right? But walk in the line between the two. As mentioned earlier, if you have more of a chronic type of injury
right.
can be needing heat to kind of
Replenish blood flow.
work
right.
that, accommodate that. So again, using the proper thing at the proper time.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I usually tell patients. I'm like, if you are playing volleyball and you land wrong and you roll your ankle and your ankle swells up to the size of a balloon, it's going to be the most appropriate time to use ice, right? But if you're somebody that's like 33 years old and you rolled your ankle in high school, but it still irritates you every now and then, you probably are going to want to alternate between hot and cold because that old injury might be recurring because of lack of blood flow to the area because, scar tissue sometimes blocks blood flow to the area. Improper like muscle activation and blood flow can block, oxygen to the area. So sometimes you do have to alternate, I think, a lot more for chronic injuries.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and you have to play around with what's right for you. Typically I recommend people more towards ice, but I've got a handful, 5-10% of people who does not work very well for them. So
yeah, I mean, we use like therapeutic laser here for a lot of sports injuries, and that's 3,600 joules of heat, and that completely fixes a lot of sports related injuries very quickly, like in 3 to 4 visits. So like there's no question that heat has its place.
Right. Yep.
For certain injuries, for sure.
So that was on kind of my list to talk about as well, so we'll kind of gear a little bit towards that. So photobiomodulation, laser therapy,
Right.
most commonly known as. There's different types of laser therapy. Most notably, therapeutically, there's class 3 and there's class 4. Class 3 is not going to be as deep penetrating. You're not going to get into the tissues quite as far, and typically it will be like a cold laser or static laser. It's just going to sit right there and work on that tissue. Class 4 laser is going to be increased in wattage. You're going to feel that heat, feel it working. It's more of a deep tissue type of therapy, type of laser, working from that regard. So that enables it to get deeper into joints, the lumbar spine, deep into the knees, and that sort of deal. So it's essentially, again, a light therapy, or infrared therapy. It helps to activate parts of the mitochondria, one of the powerhouses, if you will, of the cell, and basically speed up your healing process. Yep. So, and again, we've used it in the office for
5 years now.
Yeah. Knee injuries, extremity injuries, arthritic injuries,
All the above.
knee replacement, shoulder replacements. Yeah, I mean,
Sports
the list
injuries,
goes on.
the whole thing. Yeah.
Right. So that would be more along the lines of, you're probably not going to go out and
Buy
maybe
one
purchase
on your own,
something
yeah.
like that on your own. If you do, more power to you. But it's definitely worth mention if there's one in your area. Right. So it can be useful there. Vibration can be a wonderful therapy as well. The self-massage guns have become quite popular. There's many different brands out there. What I tell patients is typically if it percusses, if it goes up and down, kind of against your skin, that's kind of what you're looking for there as well. Some will rotate, oscillate, vibrate. Those are good for kind of increasing blood flow to more towards the surface. But again, as far as recovery goes, I would recommend the percussion type. So the massage guns, the vibration are useful. There are different power plates out there, is what they're called. So they're vibration plates.
Yeah.
Okay, there's different brands. Even like a foot massager. If you have a foot massager, that obviously feels great, probably. And
yeah, I mean, really, a lot of those things work because they just like free up your fascia, similar to how like a massage is going to free up your fascia, so you have freer movement, more blood flow.
Yep.
Better lymph flow equals better recovery.
Right. Electrical muscle stimulation, TENS unit for a personal device at home. So using electricity to, controlled amounts of electricity to, oftentimes in a targeted area, to override, as you mentioned before, the knots, right? So that's a muscular signal, or a neurological signal that creates that knot, that adhesion within muscle, within other tissues. And again, that can help to override those things neurologically and help them calm down. So that's a method as well. TENS unit, usually pretty cost effective. I mean, you're looking at anywhere from $20 to a couple hundred.
It's an easy one to have at home.
Right, yeah. And then
cheaper than the massage guns.
Yeah, definitely. Word of advice on those. I've had patients come before, I used it until the battery ran out for like 4 hours. I'm like, that's a little too long.
You're so sore.
Max of like 15 minutes on those at a time, maybe twice a day is typically where you're at. And you can use those in combination with heat or cold at home too. So that's
but with massage, you can go so deep that you like release toxins and make yourself more sore.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's always the thing, is like, even with massage, people are like, just give me all the deep tissue, and it's like, okay, well, that might be appropriate for like one muscle, but if you sit there and do that to your whole body, like, you're gonna have a huge toxin release from your muscles and lactic acid release that's gonna make you like more sore the next day.
Right. Yep. So again, don't dive in head first.
More is not always better.
Right, yeah, because you have to do these things and not focus on the immediate effect. You have to focus on the next day and the next several day effect, which, again, is watchful waiting.
Yeah. It's like if you get adjusted, sometimes you feel worse the day after, and then 3 days after you're like, everything's fixed.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I tell patients, you're going to hate me tomorrow, you're going to love me in 2 to 3 days from now.
Yeah.
So.
And that's how a lot of recovery goes.
Right. Yep.
is, sometimes things do get like worse before they get better when you really like free up an adhesion or,
Right.
Break apart some scar tissue. Sometimes it's not pleasant
Yep.
for a few days.
What you do, what you do today will benefit you in the days to come.
Right.
That's true for pretty much everything I can think of.
Yeah, right.
So we are chiropractors. So I'm obviously biased towards the chiropractic adjustment. Only about 5% of the signals that come from your body going to your brain are pain, right? And what's everybody coming in our office for? Pain, right?
Yeah.
You're focusing on the 5%, okay? Just as all these things here, we just said watchful waiting and doing things now to benefit you over the next days and in the coming future. Again, the adjustment is not, in my opinion, in our office, we try not to concentrate on that pain. Okay,
Yep.
Let's improve the problem, and then in the future, we're going to alleviate that.
Pain is the last thing to come and the first thing to leave.
Right.
So a lot of times, like if you're in pain, like you've waited to the point where you're already injured and you didn't do your homework beforehand.
It's the check engine light. I
Yeah.
mean, you forgot oil for the last 10,000 miles. You're
Yeah.
running on fumes and it's about to blow up. So
Right.
that is the pain signal going off, right?
Mhm.
Pinging. So don't wait until the pain comes. Again, the adjustment neurologically improves your body's function. It improves the communication between your brain and your body, okay?
Yeah.
Between brain and gut, between brain and big toe, everything, okay? There's no reason not to get adjusted. So again, preemptive, so start it before it becomes a problem, not after it does.
Yeah.
Right?
And something that we specifically do in our office too is we are muscle-based chiropractors. Like we do applied kinesiology where we make sure that there is 100% a connection between like your brain and your muscles. And we do that every single visit. A lot of chiropractors, they'll test your muscles at your initial appointment and then literally like never test them again until maybe you get reevaluated 2 years later. We retest your muscle strength like every single appointment. Like if we know that you have a deficiency in your quads and that your knees have been bothering you, we recheck your quad strength every single visit to make sure that the adjustment is actually positively influencing that muscle tone and that structure. Because if you're not neurologically engaged with a muscle, it will be more sore. If you like touch the outside of somebody's quads and your brain's not communicating with them properly, there will be an excess of lymph built up in there that will make you super, super sore no matter how many recovery techniques you do, because your brain and your body are not connected. And sometimes we have to reconnect that with chiropractic care in order for you to even have some of these other at-home techniques like take play. Because if your neurology is not hooked up, it doesn't matter how many times you foam roll, it's still going to hurt.
Correct.
Right?
Yep. So again, assisting within that connection and the subconscious as well, creating that connection there. Similar along those lines, acupuncture is one that we lean on pretty heavily as well.
Yeah.
Again, working with the kind of that mind-body connection there as well. I'm not an acupuncturist, so I can't speak to the exact specifics. I've used it for a myriad of symptoms of different ailments. Average for me is around once a month, so my typical healthcare regimen, adjustments about every 2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
Acupuncture once a month, massage around every month or two, and then kind of a combination of
The
things
tools we
that
talked
we've
about.
discussed so far.
Yeah.
And Dr. Rachel's going to delve into kind of the diet, supplements, and those types of things here as we continue forward. And obviously we utilize those as well. So kind of understand that everything's mobile, right? With a lot of these techniques, understand when you need what. You may forget about things from time to time, right? Oh, hey, I haven't foam rolled in 4 months. Okay, we're all human. It happens.
Yeah.
So again, brush off the dust of some of those. This is not an exhaustive list. There's other things out there. There's bigger guns out there. Okay, so if something is hanging around, don't continue to foam roll when you have a completely when you have a meniscus injury or a completely torn rotator cuff or otherwise, right? So you may have to look into PRP injections, prolotherapy, stem cell.
Or true rest days.
Yeah, there's
like
that.
For
maybe.
months. I mean, full
so,
rotator cuff tear, sometimes you do just have to like leave it alone for a while.
So again, there's time and a place for different situations.
Every technique.
Yeah.
Right. For sure. And yeah, we talk a lot about nutrition and recovery, I think, on a multitude of my podcasts. So we won't like go into this super in-depth today because I think that I kind of hammer it nonstop. But if you are under eating, you will be more sore, 100%. Like right now, I'm in a cut where I'm eating like 1,000 calories a day, and like, squats don't feel fantastic all the time because I just know I'm not hitting optimal recovery. I can't lift as much as I usually do because I'm not hitting optimal recovery because I'm under eating. So like anytime that you're under eating, you're going to have suboptimal recovery. We went through this with like 75 hard that we just completed, where you're working out twice a day, like following a super, intense food regimen. And for me, like a super intense caloric regimen, it's harder to lift heavy. It's harder to feel 100% if you're not eating as much as you should be eating. And most of that is going to come down to if you're eating enough protein. Super simple reason why. Your muscles are what part of the animal? It's the steak, right? Like if you're eating animal, like the steak is the muscle, right? So like feeds like in nutrition. If you're trying to build your quad muscles, you might need to eat quad muscles of another animal, right? So if you want to like optimize your recovery, you do have to make sure that you're eating adequate protein and eating adequate calories. And sometimes that's going to involve replenishing carbohydrate stores as well, because a lot of people, when they start to like go keto or something, they'll notice that their performance is maybe not so great, but it's because their glycogen stores are depleted in their muscles. So like those do have to be replenished on some level, and some people are more efficient at doing that with less carbs. Some people need more carbs to do that. So making sure that you're hitting your macros and just not chronically under eating is also like super important for recovery. And I say that especially for like younger athletes, because a lot of them haven't looked into the food connection yet, because teenager diets are, it's popular just to eat a bunch of shit. So a lot of times they could get more of the ankle injuries, more of the knee injuries, more of the ligament and rolls and tears, because they are just like nutritionally inadequate, because they eat like once a day and it's McDonald's. Like you have to make sure that you're eating, your body weight in protein if you want to be successful at athletics without hurting yourself. And I mean, I know when I started CrossFit, I didn't realize the importance of like food for recovery. So I was just kind of eating whatever, and my roommate at the time was not the healthiest human. And I remember going to Olive Garden one night and then showing up to CrossFit the next day and complaining to my coach and just being like, oh my gosh, like my muscles just don't feel like they work today. I remember like specifically I was sitting on the rowing machine, was talking to my coach Justin, and I was just like, I just don't understand why I feel like total shit right now. And yesterday I felt great. And he just like looked at me and he goes, well, what did you eat yesterday? And I'm like, dude, I went to Olive Garden and I had chicken Alfredo. And he was like, well, that's why you feel like trash. You just like hammered your body with like all that pasta, all those carbs, like super heavy fat, like super processed. Restaurants do sometimes God knows what to their food. And he's like, you should really try the paleo diet. And I was like, what? I'm a student at this time, right? And I'm like, what is the paleo diet? Like, kind of a thing. He's like, oh, well, we're doing this paleo challenge at the gym. You should join in on it. And, I bit into that like hook, line, and sinker. And, within 2 weeks, everything felt better. I was like hitting PRs like crazy. Like my strength went like up and out of control. And I just like got way better at the sport really quickly and realized that my soreness the next day was 100% related to, number one, the quality of what I was eating, and number two, making sure I was eating enough meat. So I mean, that was like, it just hammered it home for me. And now I always know if I have excess soreness, I sit there and I go, oh, well, you drank wine last night, you kind of deserve it. Or, oh, you went 5 hours without eating after you went and did like a hero workout or something. Yeah, so you're going to feel like trash the next day if you didn't eat for 4 or 5 hours after you work out, right? You got to hit some recovery windows and eat, less than 5 hours after a hard workout. So, nutrition is always going to be a part of recovery and always going to be a part of preventing injury. So definitely go back, listen to some of the older podcasts about hitting your macros. Download the First Form app. You can link us as your coach by typing in either at Recreate Your Health Doctor or BA Supplements. And that's a really good way to kind of see where you're at with your macros and make sure that you're eating properly for your athletic endeavors.
And I wanted to mention a note on psychology of recovery too. Okay? Whether you will, if you think you will, or if you think you won't, you're right. Okay? If you think you won't recover for something, or if you tell yourself it's going to be forever before you recover from this, you're probably right. Okay?
Yeah.
Versus if you can, evaluate and mentally tell yourself, okay, hey, I've got this is where I'm at. All right, there's nothing I can do about that other than create these steps, create these habits, implement them now consistently. That thing will improve. Okay, so create that positive mindset around it, and yes, you'll see recovery eventually with doing the right things. Okay, right. I tell patients in the office, I said there are 3 cuss words that are not to be used in here: old, age, and can't. Okay, if you tell yourself you can't do something, if you say I can't recover from this, or I can't do this thing, you're never going to. Yeah. So how you discuss those things with yourself, right? So, the other day at jiu-jitsu, I walked away and my little pinky finger was swollen from here on out, right? But I came in, I've been with laser and cold and all these things, implementing these things, and it's recovering quicker than I expected, okay? But I told myself, okay, here's what I have to implement. I have to do these things consistently, and then kind of visualize where you want to get back to, and give yourself a rough timeline on that too. Okay, so your psychological approach to recovery will dictate your recovery. Okay, and again, it's essential to have a positive mindset towards that recovery.
Yes, and another note on that is, I think mindset is a muscle. So don't expect to be like a superhero tomorrow. Like, it takes time and it takes practice to get better at those things. And that is also something that I know that I learned during 75 Hard, because, when I did it, I was more sore in like the 40s and 50s days than I was on 75, right? So like 75 Hard is you're doing 2-a-day workouts for 75 days straight, no rest days, right? I was literally less sore on day 75 than I was on like day 40, because your body and your brain get stronger and they adapt, and you learn how to heal quicker because your body knows that it has to. So if you put your body through the stress and you just have that mental toughness to believe that you can do it and believe you can recover from it, like Dr. Travis said, then you can recover from it.
And subconsciously, you've done it. You know you can do it. You're possible. It's capable.
Right. And I think that our topic on the next podcast that we do together is going to be, exercise in regards to specific injuries. Because I know somebody asked, well, how do you exercise around a knee injury, or how do you exercise around a back injury type of thing. So that's, I think, what we're going to go over in our next session together. So that'll be a good one to talk about, the mental aspect of injury as well, because that's going to be a huge part of that one.
Yep. But understand, again, when you drive a new car off the parking lot, it's going to have problems eventually. Okay, so your body will have aches and pains, bumps and bruises. Yeah. Okay, that isn't grounds to just drop everything and quit. Oftentimes, people come back worse if they drop everything. Okay, so to some capacity, use these recovery techniques in some fashion. Again, they'll
but sometimes just because you hurt doesn't mean you can't work out again.
Right.
because there's been a lot of times where I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot do a squat today. Like my knees are terrible. And then I go to the gym and I warm up for like 10 minutes and then I'm like, oh, I'm good. Everything's fine. Because as soon as you get moving and you get that oxygen flow, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, not so bad. But I mean, when you judge it based on how you feel like running out of bed, then...
Didn't that happen today? Did you want to go? Didn't want to go?
I did not want to go so bad.
And
I was like, I'm gonna
puke.
I was already dressed. You knew I was gonna go do it, but I was like, I'm gonna throw up. I feel terrible. And I did feel terrible for like the first 10, 15 minutes. Like I was sitting down in between every single set and just like staring at the barbell like, fuck, I have to pick that up again. But you know what? I did. I picked it up again, and I finished the workout that Jerry told me I had to do, and
the rest of your day's been
I've
great.
been better since then. I always feel better after I work out, no matter how trashy I feel beforehand. So, like, yeah, that's a good
great little
nugget for everybody. God, yeah, usually when you work out at like 5, 6 a.m., you don't feel great before you go, but, you know, we figure it out.
Yeah.
So, any other tidbits for you on recovery techniques for today?
I think we covered the bulk of things. We could go on for a long time, but it's a good place to start.
Yeah, it is one of our passions to see how many days we can go without exhausting ourselves with exercise. So.
Well, I like the philosophy that the universe will create a rest day occasionally for you. So if you have the ability and have the time, just go make it happen.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm with the fact that I think that active rest days are better anyways, because I mean, my rule is always like, even if it's a rest day, you should get your steps in.
Right.
If you get your steps in on a rest day, like, you're good to go. And that honestly helps my brain, because sometimes if I take a rest day, I feel like I lose momentum. But if I'm like, oh, well, I walked the dogs for an hour and I got my steps in for the day, you know, that wasn't like a exercise. Like, it didn't get my heart rate up tremendously, but at least I moved, I oxygenated things. Like, walking, I honestly think, is what we're made for. So you go get your 10,000 steps in that day. I think you still accomplished a good thing for the day, and you got a good thing for your recovery going, even though you didn't train really hard at the gym. So if you're like me and you like don't want to take a rest day because it ruins your momentum, like, try use walking the dog as your rest day.
We didn't touch much on the category of supplements. That's another rabbit hole that we could really dive down.
Well, let's just do like a quick top 5. Because,
top 5.
I mean, we talk about this stuff regularly, but what would be like your top 5?
Fish oil.
Formula 1 Ignition.
Yeah, protein source, an anti-inflammatory such as turmeric. Creatine, actually, I've been looking more into that, and it's got a lot of benefit. You know, people used it for power production mostly in the past, but man, it has a lot of recovery potential in it as well. So that's become a staple for me lately.
I mean, my favorite one lately is going to be like either DHEA or a testosterone booster. Yeah. Because anybody that like overtrains, a lot of times you are like depleting your testosterone with that, and taking like ashwagandha or DHEA is like a game changer if you're like really burning the candle. Yeah. So those have helped me get through the last few months of prep. Like, I'm totally like dependent on the rut supplement from Bucked Up at this point, which is mostly ashwagandha based, with some other like potent nutrients in it. But I mean, that was like the biggest thing for me to get through like periods of intense training, is like that mega dose of ashwagandha, vitamin D, all that's in that product. Yeah.
Collagen's been a big one for me too lately. Just with different stresses, with more time on the jiu-jitsu mat, you know, more different mobility challenges there. A lot of walking and distance covering with 75 hard. So yeah, collagen has been a consistent staple as well. So. And
just to reiterate that for you females can take testosterone boosters. I have a lot of like friends and patients that like to burn the candle at the gym, and most of them at some point in their life will have a low testosterone moment that, you know, taking some of the ashwagandha and things like that really helps bring it back.
Or I've had a lot of patients just go get that pellet too, and they're like, oh my gosh, now I feel incredible.
I feel like $100
before you
now.
crash, there can be different conservative option as well. Don't get me wrong, there's time and place for everything, but again, stop the crash.
Yeah, no, prevent the crash. But that's always a good one. But all right, well, thanks for joining us in today, you guys. We're always open to suggestions for more topics. If you'd like to follow either of us on social media or request topics via DMs on there, I am at Recreate Your Health Doctor and
at Tourjee DC. So that's TOURJEE DC on Instagram.
Yeah, so hit us up on the social. Talk to you guys soon.